Now, we've been doing, we've had a lot of development go on in the last few weeks, and that I sort of want to bring people a bit abreast with, let people know what's been going on. Um, from there, we'll do a little bit of a discussion about the auto harvester that's coming up, governance that's coming up, and then we'll move into the questions. Does that sound all right with you, Dylan?
Perfect.
Yeah, beautiful. So, if at any point in time you have some more questions, certainly feel free to just put them in the questions page. I believe that is the AMA page, and
That's right.
yeah, and we'll get to them. You can also put a question in Telegram, I believe, as well, if anyone's come over from Telegram, and we'll also get to that too. So, let's start with some recent developments that we've had from the back end. So, we've been doing a lot of back end work as I've spoken about previously, we have basically gone to the point now that we've removed the PAB as a dependency entirely for the DApp. And I would love to get Ryan up here for this to give some more info. Dylan, if you can try and make him available or here. Um,
Yep. And try.
the the core the core difference that the user will notice from the user end is that we're going to be building transactions faster. There's essentially one less layer to go through for the transaction to be built, which means the transaction build time decreases. Um, from the back end, it improves optimization and improves efficiency for a lot of things as well, which we are really, want to be able to get as optimized as possible so that we're able to run as many transactions as possible comfortably. That's essentially where our focus is with the DEX, at least for the back end of the DEX, is we want to, when the bull market comes, be able to handle as many transactions as we can coming through. Now, as for the front end, we've done a few little updates recently, which Dylan put a post out about yesterday on on our Twitter. We've got the ability to change your currency. We've got the ability to. I should go read the tweet, but it is listed in that most recent tweet.
Yeah, we've got live serves to the bar, which has been around for about 2.5 weeks, nearly three. So you can view every serve to the bar and you can view it live. We've got the current blockchain load in the bottom left-hand corner, so you can see uh, exactly how much the blockchain is currently, I guess, logged.
Mhm.
You can now switch between currencies if you go to the little cog sign up the top right-hand corner, and you can go, between multiple currencies. And you can sort pools now by TVL volume and APR. They're our small UI updates that we've added in the past 3 weeks or so. And while it seems little, I think maybe individually, as we build and build and build, these things will really be a tool that our community can use.
Yeah, exactly. And we're implementing charts as we speak, really. Um, so that's something that is we're super excited for, and we also think we just think, look, I said this before, I don't think charts are vitally important for dexes, because you should be using charting software which either aggregates or gives you more information than what you can get on the front of most dexes, but it has become standard within Cardano, so we definitely want to be implementing that as well. And at the same time, we've actually got a new Trello page that we've got on our Git books. So if you go to our docs from our main website, so if you select more and then you go docs, if you then go to the roadmap and click the link that takes you out to the project tracker, we've now got a project tracker that's tracking the current things that we're doing, the things that we have in the pipeline, and what's being completed and pushed to mainnet. And that's a list of goals, what's in progress, and what's completed on mainnet. So definitely feel free to go give that a bit of a look. And if you guys have any ideas of stuff that we think that we need to be working on that isn't listed there, that you'd like to see added, definitely feel free to let us know what you think that is. So most immediately in terms of larger developments, the first thing that we'll have coming up is governance. Now, governance is like, it's really important for us because there's a lot of questions that the community are asking. Hey, Ryan's come up.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, good.
Before I move on to the governance, is there anything that you want to add about the PAB?
No, I think you pretty much handled it. It's just the initial design of the PAB was we were using it the way it was initially designed, which works great. Um, Essentially, all we did was move the dependency when users make requests on our DApp. Um, so there's no downstream dependency for that. They're completely isolated from the rest of the system. The backend system is still using the PAB the way it's intended. It's just for creating orders. And there was a lot of reasons for this, but we felt like it was necessary, and it's helping us get to the next steps of faster transactions, better transaction building, as we're doing an overhaul right now of our transaction builder to deal with different issues and bugs and so on. But you pretty much covered it all.
But you did bring up something really important there. That next step that we're doing is that overhaul of the transaction builder. And we've already done a few adjustments here and there. We've been working on it. We've added the token fragmentation. So we've done a few things to improve that already. But there's some decent algorithm changes that we know that we're able to implement that should improve the transaction building overall. And we're working on implementing those. Man, I wish building on Cardano was easier. Anyway, so the next item I wanted to discuss here was governance. So we're getting governance out. Sorry, we're getting governance organized with Summon. This is a super important step now, as governance there's been a lot of questions being asked by the community that need to be decided by governance, and I want to be able to do this as soon as possible. So items such as, there's been a lot of talk about a token burn, and that's something that I don't think that that's my place or the team's place to say that we will or we won't have a token burn. That's too big a design change. And I know that a lot of people believe in the initial design. There's also a lot of ways that could be conducted. I'll go through a few here. So token burns can kind of be managed in a few different circumstances or in a few different ways. You could use it as integrated into the system, whereby you essentially generate fees of some description or some kind of earnings mechanism, and then that mechanism is used to rebuy the token or to distribute the token to the burn address. In other words, you're redistributing tokens from within the system and you're taking it out and burning them. Another option is to do it from the total supply that hasn't been released yet. This could be managed in many different ways. An example of that would be with every harvest, it harvests an extra double as much, and that extra 50% gets given to the burn address, right? So rather than having a sudden reduction in total supply, that reduction in total supply takes place with every harvest or every farming set. Or there could just be a flat burn of total supply, for example, whereby the harvests don't change and the total supply remains where it is. Sorry, and the total supply shrinks. All these different, so particularly for like the first one, for example, which I mentioned, which is redistributing from within the ecosystem, given the design with our bar, it doesn't seem to me as if that would be the optimal implementation of a burn. Of course, this is up to governance to decide once we're there. But we want to have essentially an open forum discussion with the community about all these different options, how they can be implemented, and after how they can be implemented, we might even have a series of votes on different stages of burning, different types of burning, different amounts of burning. So that way, there would be an overall vote of yes to burning or no to burning of some description, and then from there we can hone it in. In that way, I would foresee, I don't know what the community's response will be, but in that way, I'd foresee that it's going to be, a fair opportunity for those that are most impacted by it to be able to have their say on it. As we get closer to any kind of discussion of that description, of course, or while we're having that discussion of that description, we'll be having town halls just like this, focused on that, as I very briefly mentioned some of the top level stuff about it, but it can get very deep very quickly. Now, let's also have contemporaneously to the governance, we're working on the auto harvester. And at the moment, we're finishing off the final design for the approach that we're going to be taking for phase 1. Now, we're going to be releasing a few articles really describing this in detail shortly. And shortly, I mean in the next 2 weeks or so. And we'll start releasing a series of articles describing the auto harvester in more depth and how it's specifically going to be working and implementing VyFi, and what impacts we expect that to have and why. Now, there's a lot of, as I'm sure you can imagine, there's a lot of technicalities, I guess I should say, like a lot of technical motions. I don't know what exactly the word is, technical flows, a lot of things that can happen with an auto harvester, right? And a lot of ways that assets can be moving within an auto harvester. And we've gotten to a fairly firm understanding of the different design schemas and how they will affect the implementation, because we essentially want something to function similarly to how it works on VyFinance, but we can't implement it like VyFinance because we're on Cardano, of course. So we've got a very firm understanding of exactly what we need to, we've got a very firm understanding of all the options that we have in terms of what it looks like. And now we are going through and modeling and determining which of these options will give the best user experience and also allow for the best efficiency of transactions. So this is all, as I said, stuff that we're working on, and we will be starting to release articles based on these modelings and these further discussions that we've had on the final design fairly soon, to be outlining how we expect that to be looking for the user and also function to be looking from a back end. So in terms of the governance and the auto harvester, they're sort of the two next big things, and they're essentially progressing fantastically, slowly but surely. And the DEX back end and front end we're working on daily. So we're doing a lot of work, and within that, we want to be hosting these more often so we can actually share that work with you, because sometimes it may look like not much is changing. So let's go through some questions, I think.
Yeah, let's go for it. I'll go down the list. There's not a ton. So we'll start with render scene. What is the status of the auto harvester, and how will regular status updates look like moving forward?
So, as I said, the status of the auto harvester is exactly that. We're very close to sort of releasing the final design schema and releasing the way in which we're implementing it for the users. And from there, we expect, where I can't tell you what the build time will be, to be perfectly honest, but we don't expect it to be a massive build. There's a lot less smart contracts, at least on chain, going on than there was for the DEX or the vaults. So we've already done a lot of the work that's involved. So we expect it to be moving at a fairly decent pace. As for the progress reports, we can maybe build a specific progress tracker like we have for the Trello of the project report to allow users to actually look. But, a lot of those sprints, so to speak, where we're showing this progress, A lot of those are like internal, where we're discussing very specific steps that are needed to complete, you know, a form of UTXO management that we're having trouble with, or, you know, specific development things. So don't expect it to be a full development outline, but more just like the Trello, it's overarching goals that we're aiming and where we are in the progress of doing so.
Beautiful. Second question from Renderscene. Can we increase the platform's buyback of VyFi? So maybe this ties into our upcoming governance.
Yeah, so I'm just grabbing something. That's very much something that, to me, and I think to the whole team, should be left for governance. So yes, in theory, it can be increased. We need to, because at the moment it's being distributed at 0.2 going to, for swaps, it's 0.2% going to the liquidity providers and 0.1% going to the bar. That can be adjusted for more to the bar. But that would be something that the governance would have to decide on, as that's also impacting liquidity providers. It's not just impacting the bar. There's a wider branch of people that are being impacted by that decision. So that would certainly be a decision for governance, and it's definitely something that on the forums can be discussed, and if it's popular enough, it would be raised to a vote.
Beautiful. Question 3 from Renderscene. Are there any plans in place to aid with the current long-standing price correction and overall market dynamics in crypto and traditional finance?
This is one that we've been thinking about a lot for the last 2 weeks, and well, particularly in the last 2 weeks, but of course we're always thinking about it. The biggest problem, he did mention macro environment as well there, so I want to just do a very brief discussion on macro environment for a second. It's very difficult when you're combating against raising interest rates as a asset class. So all asset classes tend to do poorly when interest rates are going up. Interest rates have been spiking like crazy, and they're still doing so. They haven't really slowed down in most of the world. Inflation is still going like crazy, and it hasn't really slowed down for the most of the world. Unfortunately, that leads to a circumstance where the average person, whereas during Corona they had $1,000 to throw at crypto, now the average person has to put that $1,000 towards the mortgage, right? Or has to put it towards groceries or bills. The macroeconomic environment has changed drastically over the last 2 years due to those raising debt, those raising interest levels, making it harder to service debt. Now, this macro condition is something that we can't fix. I wish I had the power to fix that. I wish central banks had the power to, or the foresight to do something about it earlier than they did, but they didn't. And that's something that is going to be a weight on all asset classes until interest rates start to slow down and show signs of reversal. Now, within that, the world is also currently in a point of correction whereby we haven't had interest rates this high globally since the 90s. And this is a new experience for a lot of people in their 30s, 40s, and even early 50s that got into the markets in their 30s. This is an experience for those investors that they're not used to. As the market evens out and the world becomes more accustomed to a high interest rate environment, in other words, the extreme reaction calms down, we can expect to see a petering off where we eventually hit some form of equilibrium at this state of high interest. That's what you're kind of looking out for to start to see signs of a reversal. Now, let's take this back to VyFi. we're fighting against this current, right? Every cryptocurrency and every project is fighting against this current right now. The way that we as a team see it is that we need to position ourselves as strongly as possible for when this current begins to shift. And the way to position ourselves as strongly as possible for when this current shifts is to have the best product and as many products that are useful to the ecosystem as possible. With utility comes growth. So for us, the focus has been, is, and will continue being building, and getting out the best products that we can for the ecosystem and for the community. The next one, which is the auto harvester, the entirety of the Cardano ecosystem is in dire need for a liquidity aggregation tool. There are none that exist right now. And by implementing one for the ecosystem, we're not only hoping to boost liquidity for the entire ecosystem, but boost value to VyFi, boost value to VyFi holders through the bar, and boost value of boost utility of the VyFi token. So the best thing we can do, in my opinion, and everyone has the right to share their opinions with me on this, please, because I know that this isn't the only priority, is to build the best goddamn auto harvester that we can straight out the gate with all the lessons that we've already learned from our product launches, so that we're in a position to be the best product on Cardano come the bull.
Right. Well said, Steve. Question number 4 from Miranda C. Is there anything in the works that you'd like to update the community on in general? So I guess you probably touched on a lot of that at the start, but is there anything else that you'd want to share?
We mentioned the transaction builder. We mentioned the governance. We mentioned the auto harvester. The Trello I already mentioned. Definitely go have a look at the Trello. That tracks the progress and also lists of goals that we currently have. We're doing a little bit of work with Tap Tools at the moment to implement a lot of things. That's actually something, Ryan, you may want to speak a little bit about that.
I mean, there's not much to talk about yet. We've had a lot of feedback from the community to work on some kind of like profile tracker, or just like better visibility on trades on our decks and the bar and the vaults and so on. Tap Tools has a lot of these tools, so we've been partnering with them and working at them and seeing how can we maybe share some resources. VyFi is all about, working with different community members. That's why, like in the case of Summon, we decided they're a full-time business building out a great governance system. Our governance system was something we built quickly, and it was fairly primitive. It works great, but there's definitely better ways to do it. And so we're really focused on, if somebody does something really well, we'd rather work with them so that we can use their product, and then we could focus on what we need to focus on. Because, we're not just a DEX. We have way more moving parts than a DEX. We have vaults, we have bar, we're working on auto harvester, we have a lottery. There's a lot of moving parts. So as much of other teams we could depend on, I think that's really important. So in the case of Tap Tools, we're looking at they're really good at aggregating data and stuff. So we're saying, what pieces could we use if we're going to build out a unique profile page, maybe different than other DEXs are doing it. So it's not just around the VyFi ecosystem, but what about the whole Cardano ecosystem has something similar to what Tap Tools does. So that was something that we'd like to do coming down the line, and we started to look at what data we have access to, what we would need, and so on.
Perfect. So that's something that we're really excited for, because we know that that's a UI upgrade that many people have been asking for. So we're really excited to bring a sort of unique offering there that will give more information than the other DEXs will. And I should also add, with that community thing, much like many members in the community use our tools so that they can better concentrate on what they're building for things such as vaults, for farms. It's very much the same thing. This is a complex ecosystem. It's very difficult to build and to design things correctly and in a manner that is audited and safe. And as a result of that, it is sometimes, not sometimes, you have different groups that have specialized in their field, and it's always best to work with the specialists in that product than it is to try and reinvent the wheel from scratch. At least that's my opinion. I think that should be the opinion of anyone who's running a business. You don't need to invent every product that's already been invented. Now, is there any other question, Dylan?
There is. All right, next up, we've got Dom E. He says, since you mentioned it being difficult / hard to develop on Cardano, aren't you using Aiken winky face?
We are currently not. It's something we may be using in the future. We started developing the auto harvester without it. It doesn't mean it's something we can't switch to. I wouldn't say it necessarily makes development easier. It's a tool that helps you, but the main issue with developing on Cardano is the UTXO, ETXO structure, right? That's why wallets have been such a struggle on Cardano. Like, why do we not have one wallet that's perfect? We have a lot that do different things well, but for the most part, it's always a rough experience with wallets. And that just has to do with UTXOs. It's difficult. There's a trade-off. You have security. I truly believe that like Bitcoin and Cardano are like two of the best blockchains that exist, but building on it is a little bit more difficult. And it's just one of the trade-offs you have for having a way better system in blockchain. Where Ethereum is super easy to develop on, but security is terrible. There's a lot of negatives. So we just need to realize that we're still in very early stages of building on Cardano. In 5 years from now, building on it is going to look completely different than it does now. 2 years ago, when we started building out, it looked completely different than it does now. So we're going to continue to progress. I feel like it's progressing really quickly, but the main struggle is just how do we design systems to work a certain way? And that's kind of like why with our farms, we went the direction we did go. Everyone wants to do on every other chain, it's classic. You deposit tokens into a contract, it locks it up, you farm. On Cardano, it doesn't make much sense to do that. So that's kind of why we went a different route. And we're going to continue to do that. It's like, let's think outside the box. Let's think, how can we build things differently with the UTXO model? And that's where most of the struggle comes through because it's not something that's already been designed. The AMA we built is not the same as Uniswap on Ethereum. It's designed completely different. It may look the same to the user, but it's a completely different design. And I don't think it's the best design for a DEX. I think we're going to figure out something that's even better for a DEX on Cardano than the current system that most people are doing. So
and that's something that definitely may come and show itself, particularly if we're using particularly when we get Hydra heads and Hydra becomes involved. All of a sudden, there should hopefully be some DEX implementations that do work better than the current models. And something I also really want to add to what Ryan was saying there, this space is moving incredibly quick. The way that it looks now is so vastly improved from what it looked like 2 years ago, right? Aiken is another tool in that. And we're certainly not discounting it because it would be silly to do so. Something, excuse me, something within there though, is that we have built our contracts in Plutus. Our engineers have spent many years studying Plutus, and we know that we're able to build commercial grade contracts using Plutus as a core language.
yeah, I think that's a good point too. It's if we find out that any of these tools make our lives easier, we're not opposed to doing it. But I think also there's a trap of, oh, there's a new shiny thing, let's divert our attention. And then it sets focus off the product and more on the tooling. So we're open to it if it helps us build faster and better, but it's not something that we feel like we need to use.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
Yeah, go Dylan.
All right. So next up, and I'm almost certainly going to have a poor pronunciation. How Tien? Sorry, I'm a ignorant Australian. Uh, how is NFT farm boosting coming along?
Hey, okay. So NFT farm boosting is definitely not our number one priority right now. We would expect, again, I don't want to give time frames. We would expect it to be coming out sometime after the governance, as that is certainly going to be our number one next big item that we're going to be bringing out. The NFT boosting. So I'm not going to explain how it works yet. No. Still too early, but functionally, that's going to be around the time of either just before or just after our phase 1 auto harvester is the expected time frame for that, as that's going to be an extension to our farming, which we're likely going to be doing a little bit of a play around with around the time of our auto harvester. So it makes sense to be building it out when we're doing work with our farms at the same time, so that we're not stopping all these other productions to adjust our farms, only to then need to adjust our farms when we've got the auto harvester being built.
All right. That's the end of the questions as they stand right now. If anybody wants to ask anything, now's your time.
Actually, that went for a solid half an hour, which for a first one, I'm pretty happy with.
Yeah, I think like I said at the start, as we host these more regularly, hopefully fortnightly, we can start to get some traction. More people will come in. We'll have more questions.
So
This is
one of
definitely
the
something
big
we want to keep up.
one of the big things we want to be doing as well is, and this is something I want to just add, the auto harvester is going to be a first of its kind on Cardano, and we're super excited about it because we think it's really going to bring the Cardano ecosystem up to a new level. Around that, we want to be launching a bit of a marketing campaign to do so, right? So we're going to be working with a host of influencers to start actually pushing out a marketing campaign around the auto harvester and getting excitement being built around the auto harvester specifically as the first time that there's going to be liquidity aggregation on Cardano. This is something that we're still planning right now. So we won't give many details on that just yet, but you may already see that we've had a few influencers that have been posting about us in the past few weeks. We've been making friends with a few influencer networks at these conferences. So expect, over the coming months for us to really start ramping up a campaign surrounding exactly that. Because we think it's really important that we get this information out there. Once we have a liquidity aggregator, essentially the basics of all DeFi on Cardano are complete. You have swaps, you have lending, you have liquidity aggregation, and you have options. They're the foundations of a DeFi system, and Cardano will essentially have that all available to all of us very soon. And that is something that we're super excited about.
You're
Go,
forgetting
Ryan.
one important fundamental piece is the VyFi lottery.
Oh, and the VyFi lottery. Sorry. That is the most important one. That is what keeps DeFi spinning, is the lotteries. So
I guess
yeah.
one more thing we could mention is that next weekend, the majority of our core team will be in NFT Con in Vegas. Wait, what are they? It's called something different this year, right?
NFT XLV.
Yes.
Lots of letters.
I think pretty much most of our core team will be there. Nick will not be there, unfortunately, unless if we can get him to change his mind and his availability. But we'd love to see you guys, so definitely come by, swing by our booth. We'll be there the whole weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And if any of you guys have in the Las Vegas area next week. Definitely don't miss that. I'm really excited to see the whole team, to see you boys. And it's been over a year since I've seen Ryan in person, as an example. So I am or almost a year. So I'm super excited to meet up with the team again.
Yeah, it's going to be great. So are there any more questions, or is that's it for
That's
now?
us. Unless something pops up right now, it's that's us.
Beautiful.
So maybe we'll wrap it up here. Nice, short and sweet one for the first time. But like I said, we'll be running these more regularly, and we'll start growing some traction, I'm sure. So thanks
Oh,
so
and
much to everybody who put a question in and who showed up. This is awesome.
yeah, thank you so much. We'll be hosting a Twitter space next week. We'll get an announcement for that going this weekend. And we're essentially looking at running Twitter spaces and Discord sort of alternating weeks here on out. So we'll hear from you soon. Goodbye for now, but not forever.